So what the heck does horsemanship and cooking have in common? Well, you might be pretty surprised. There's a lot in common. In fact, a lot of the analogies that I use at clinics and all across the country when we teach video lessons or do online videos for our online video library, often have cooking analogies. Why? Because a lot of times folks want to focus on maneuvers like the flying lead change, the spin or the turnaround, the sliding stop, or we get into all sorts of different maneuvers, half pass, side pass, whatever, right, shoulder in. And so they want to work on these combination maneuvers, as I call it, right? The finished product is what they want to work on, yet oftentimes what they need is the ingredients to get them there, right? So right now I'm getting ready to cook a cream spinach chicken, stuffed chicken deal. So I've got my ingredients, right? I've got my mushrooms, I've got my tomatoes, I've also got some onions, I've got green peppers, right? I've got all this stuff. I've got my spinach here, I've got all my ingredients, right? And all of these kind of vary in quality, but the importance with these ingredients is that when it comes to our horsemanship, the finished product is very much dependent upon the quality of the ingredients and how well we can use them. So what can take some average ingredients and what can make that better? Being more familiar with your tools. So being more familiar with your tools in cooking might be a knife. It might be your iron skillet. It might be the stove top that you're cooking on, right? But with our horses, we have to get familiar with our reins, how our bridle works, the saddle, how the horse can understand that. We have to get familiar with our aids, our spur, our crop, right? There's certain places that we can touch a horse with a spur that will get a certain response, versus if we take that spur further back or spur further forward. When we tap a horse with a crop, maybe if we tap them on the outside of the hip or on top of the rump, how does that affect what we're asking them to do, right? We have to get familiar with our tools. And then we have to finesse how we use them. So early on, we might be able to get something done. We might be able to cook the meal and get the finished product, because we've all probably had a meal that didn't look that pretty, but it tasted great, right? But with horsemanship, a lot of times when you get into judged events and everything, sometimes getting it, you might have got it done, but a lot of times like the hunters or reining or dressage it's judged on how it looks. It's the presentation of that. So we have to be able to in a very finessed way, be able to get these things done. So that means we have to be familiar with our tools, we have to be familiar with our horse, and our horse and us have to have that communication between us to where we can work from where the horse is at. We know what if they feel off one day, if they feel a little bit better on another day, if they feel a little fresher, they feel a little lazy. We have to have that feel between that on, so that we can get the job done. And then we have to get more and more finessed, and the way we do that is that we practice and we get better and we use our tools more and more, to where initially when you go to cut an onion or you go to cut a tomato or a mushroom or something, you know, or even when you get into your green peppers, right, we want nice strips with this for this recipe, right? We want nice clean strips, but initially you might like accidentally make these little slices and they don't look that pretty, and so your finished product doesn't look as good. And so when it comes into the horsemanship and training and cooking, you got to look at the quality ingredients. You have to be familiar with your tools. You have to spend the time and practice and finesse the most basic things, so that by the time you get to the end result, it works. Baking is a great example of this, because like with cooking on a stovetop or on the grill, you can kind of wing it, right? That's kind of what I'm doing tonight. I've read the recipe, I've got my ingredients out, and from here, I'm gonna go on and kind of do what I'd like to do with it and get there. And so the nice thing with cooking is, and when we look at our horses, is that, you know, each horse needs a different feel. So each person can take their own recipe and conform that to how they want it to be, right? This recipe didn't call for mushrooms. I like mushrooms, so we're adding mushrooms to it, right? But with our horses, they might need us to offer them a feel that's more conducive to them. With baking, you have to stick to the recipe. This is why my mom is not the best person for baking, because she likes to take the ingredients and make it her own. And with baking, it's very regimented on how you get things so that your dough rises, so your cake rises, so your cookies rise, all those things. You have to follow the instructions, because baking is very much to a science. Certain ingredients react with other ingredients and have reactions, and we have to understand that. And that's kind of how our horsemanship is. If you want the flying lead change and you don't understand that this ingredient plus this ingredient causes a horse to blow its shoulder out, then you're not going to realize that. So you have to go back and you have to educate yourself and go through that. But anyway, guys, I don't want this video to take too long. I just want to correlate these two things. I think it's a very applicable analogy that many of us can understand. And it's always fun because it's a process, and I'm all about the process. So anyway, guys, Coltman's with Coltman's Horsemanship. Find it helpful, find it insightful, whatever it might be, feel free to share it. All right, guys, take care.